The following podcast contains bizarre theories, strange facts, and some out-of-this-world opinions. Listener discretion is advised, especially if you trust the government.
Conspirashy.
Welcome, conspiracy lovers, to the very first episode of Conspirashy, the show where no story is too strange, no theory too far-fetched, and no one is safe from our deep dives into the unknown. I'm Ash, your host, your guide into the world of conspiracies, and occasional devil's advocate. Today we're diving straight into the deep end with one of the biggest, boldest, and most bonkers conspiracies of all time, the Moon Landing Hoax. So, was the moon landing in 1969 real, or was it an elaborate Hollywood hoax? Did Neil Armstrong really take that one small step for man, or was he just taking one giant leap onto a cleverly lit Hollywood soundstage? Now, before anyone starts throwing space rocks at me, let's get one thing straight. I'm not saying the moon landing was fake, but I'm also not saying the moon landing was fake. Let's just say there's a lot to unpack here, and there's a bunch of evidence that's suspicious enough to make you go, that's weird. And that's all we need for an episode of Conspirashy. So grab a drink, get comfy, and who knows, maybe together we'll uncover the truth of one of the biggest conspiracies of all time. Or at least we'll have a laugh trying. Let's start with the why, because every good theory needs a motive. So it's 1969, the US and the Soviet Union are locked in this Cold War era pissing contest, essentially, aka the space race. Both sides just absolutely desperate to be the first to slap a flag on the moon, and as we've all been force-fed, USA won the race. But what if the US couldn't actually get there on time? Maybe the rockets weren't reliable, the maths wasn't mathing, but what do you do when the whole world's watching and failure isn't an option? You fake it. And let's be real, wouldn't be the first time governments bent the truth now, would it? So if you've seen the footage and you're sat there like, Ash, this shit kinda looks fake, well, you're not alone. Moon landing hoax theorists argue that faking the moon landing would have been cheaper, safer, and way less embarrassing than blowing up another rocket on TV. Now, I've done some digging online, and I have to say, some of these theories do have a strange amount of evidence, in quotation marks, that goes with them. So hold on to your tinfoil hat, because it's time to dive into our first conspiracy, and we're about to discover who might have helped NASA pull off one of the greatest hoaxes of all time. So the year's 1969, you're about to fake a moon landing. Who do you call? According to theorists, NASA might have picked up the phone and dialed none other than legendary director Stanley Kubrick. I mean, it's quite an interesting one because Kubrick's name pops up in every version of this theory I found online. And it's because around the same time, Kubrick released 2001 A Space Odyssey. Now, this film is known for its mind-blowingly realistic space visuals, especially for the 60s. It was well ahead of its time, and if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's epic. So epic that the theory goes, NASA saw the film and thought, yes, this guy gets it. He knows his way around a moon set. He can help us pull this off. And let's be honest, if someone, well, government agency, calls you offering you a script like that back in the 60s, and you were the visionary of your time, or trying to be the visionary of your time, wouldn't you have taken it? Wouldn't you have done it? It's a no-brainer, really, and the whole theory is boosted off the back of one of the biggest questions skeptics raise about the moon landing, right? And that is the lighting. So in the footage, the astronauts, Buzz and Neil, are perfectly lit, even when they're standing in the shadows. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there's a catch with that, right? So the moon has no atmosphere. No atmosphere means no light scattering. So essentially what I'm trying to say is it should all just be harsh shadows and pitch black darkness up there. But instead, it looks suspiciously similar to 2001 A Space Odyssey. Like, if you go and watch it now and you compare that film to the moon landing footage, I mean, it's not a far reach to link the two, right? NASA claims, however, that the light in the footage is caused because it's bouncing off the lunar surface. I mean, it's a pretty shit response. Like, do you know what? I don't know how convincing that is, and it makes you question: would it really look like that? The lighting does seem a bit too perfect. It's a bit too perfect, to be honest. There's no atmosphere on the moon, no light scattering. Should all just be harsh shadows, pitch black darkness. Yet you can see them perfectly lit up, and NASA just says, "Oh, it's just the light bouncing off the surface." Like, does make you think, and gives fuel to theorists, right? It gives fuel to this theory because it's not a solid answer, in my opinion. And to be honest, if Kubrick did direct it, they would have absolutely nailed this moon landing. Like, yeah, it would have taken about 127 takes or something, but they would have got it, and the end result would have looked very similar to what we actually got. So, I don't know. I don't know about that one. It is a bit sus, and I'm not convinced by NASA's response there. But the Kubrick theory doesn't stop there. It takes a very interesting turn, and I I enjoyed going down the rabbit hole here because many believe he actually left us clues in his other movies about his role in faking the moon landing, right? So they point to The Shining. So The Shining is one of Kubrick's most famous films, and they point to it as kind of a hidden confession. So specifically, they say the movie is full of cryptic messages about his involvement. I actually went back and watched it recently after doing, the research. And I mean, I can kind of see it, what people are talking about here. It's definitely one of those that if you're looking for it, you'll find it. So after I tell you a couple of things to look out for that I found online, you can go back and watch it yourself and see, you can find these things. So, for example, Danny, the kid in The Shining, he's wearing a sweater with the Apollo 11 rocket on it, right? And if you have seen it, anyone remember the infamous room 237? Well, the moon is about 237,000 miles from Earth. Coincidence? Theorists say it's Kubrick subtly admitting he was in on the conspiracy. And yeah, as I said, if you look for it, you can definitely see the cryptic messages theorists have honed in on. Is it a standout? I'm not sure. But there's plenty more than the ones I just mentioned. All it takes is a simple Google search. You'll find loads of them about cryptic messages in The Shining and in his other films. So if you're interested in that, just give it a quick Google and check them out and let me know what you find. But again, if you wanted someone to direct the greatest hoax in human history, you would have wanted it to have been Stanley Kubrick at that time in 1969. He was arguably the most profound director of that time period. So that's like today asking Steven Spielberg, Michael Bay, or James Cameron, something like that, who would do an amazing job and would pull off something that looks incredible and realistic for this time period. Although, it'd be a bit more bait now because of CGI and whatnot. Back then it was black and white and all that. So it was a bit easier to pull off, and people were used to seeing films with strings pulling around monsters and stuff. So I can see that they would have pulled in a very good director to pull this off. And one thing that I find interesting personally is, can you imagine if he was involved, if Stanley Kubrick was involved in this, can you imagine his life from that point? Like, he would have been under so much surveillance, all those NDAs he would have signed, like national security risk, all the rest of it. He would have been under so much surveillance. His life would have been actual hell. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it would have been hell. And you think that maybe it would have been so overwhelming for him to all of a sudden be thrust into this national security life where you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You don't know whether the person sat on the bench reading the newspaper is CIA or if it's just a random pedestrian. You'd think that he would have needed some sort of release. I would think he would need some sort of release personally, and maybe that's what he did with his films, with including those cryptic messages and that kind of venting through his art form, through his filmmaking. It would make sense, and I find that really interesting. And yeah, I can't imagine his life if he was involved. But by the way, if you haven't seen 2001: Space Odyssey or The Shining, What are you doing? Sort your life out. Go watch them. So let's move on now to probably the most known, discussed, and debated conspiracy surrounding the moon landing: the American flag. Yeah, you already know what I'm talking about. You probably even have your own theory about it. No matter who you speak to about this, someone's always got something to say about this damn flag. But if you don't know, everyone around the globe in 1969 is glued to their TVs. Buzz and Neil are seen proudly planting the US flag on the moon, and the crowd goes wild. USA have pulled it off. The crowds are waving. The flag on the moon's waving. Fireworks are going off. And one detail I just mentioned sparked one of the biggest ongoing debates ever. How is the flag waving? So there's no wind on the moon, no atmosphere, no breeze. So how is that flag waving like it's just been popped up at a summer picnic? I don't understand how this flag is waving on the moon. Like, it's waving so perfectly as well. NASA's explanation is that the flag had a horizontal rod to keep it upright, and any movement you see is from Buzz and Neil twisting it in the ground. Sure, NASA. Sure. Seems to many, though, that maybe it's more realistic to think that it was filmed on a hot day in Hollywood and some poor stage assistant forgot to turn the fan off. Sounds a bit more accurate. To some theorists, this discrepancy acts as solid proof of a faked moon landing. You know, one of those Scooby-Doo moments where you can finally go, ah, gotcha! Rip off the mask and it's been NASA all along! Yeah, I mean, the flag waving is a big one. It's a massive one. And can you blame theorists for really, really focusing on this? Because it's a pretty odd and major detail to have overlooked for a government agency that supposedly spent millions of dollars and years planning every aspect of this mission just to overlook the flag. Like, and it's become one of the most iconic shots of the whole thing, and it's the one that's surrounded by so much skepticism. And who knows, maybe they were so focused on getting the perfect shot on time to the world that they just forgot about the fact that the flag doesn't wave on the fucking moon. I mean, but at the same time, maybe flags do wave on the moon. I don't know. I'm no atmosphere genius. I'm just presenting the cold, hard facts slash search results. Listen, I've watched the footage so many times at this point, and I'm inclined to feel like there's no metal rod in that flag. Those stars and stripes are truly blowing in the wind. I don't know how, but there's no doubt in my mind that some sort of breeze is making sure that that flag is waving so patriotically. It's like the perfect American flag moment. But let me know what you think. What's your thoughts on the flag waving? Do you have any theories of your own? I'm sure you do. Let me know. I'm super interested to hear what you guys have to say about this, because there are so many theories about this flag. But the oddities don't stop there, guys. So let's take a breath and dive into another major question supporters of the hoax theory love to ask. Where are the stars in the footage? This one opened my mind and made me question everything. So, you're on the moon, no atmosphere, again, no atmosphere, should be surrounded by the blackest sky imaginable, and yet not a single star appears in any of the photos or footage. Mind blown. Seriously though, where are the fucking stars? NASA has commented on it, and they say that the cameras were set to expose to be able to capture footage on the bright lunar surface, which in the end washed out all of the stars. Okay, fair enough. It's a solid answer. I don't really know too much about cameras, but that sounds legit. Theorists, however, argue that they chose to leave out the stars on purpose. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because it made me question everything. If they left the stars in, right? If they included the stars, some clever clogs out there would have been able to, at some point, use that footage to align star positioning to verify where and when the footage was shot. I mean, it's so true. And if they found something that didn't add up, it would have just been an absolute disaster for NASA. It's crazy. I just can't, it makes sense. It makes so much sense. So they just decided to leave the stars out. No, no stars, no questions, problem solved. Like, can you actually imagine the conversation now? Like, some poor intern walks into the boardroom. Um, Sorry to disturb you guys, but just noticed that we forgot to add the stars. Excuse me? Yeah, the stars. They're not in the footage. Fuck it, just leave it. Leave them out, no questions. It'll all blow over. But also, you're you're fired, just like the stage assistant who left the fan on the flag. This is a disaster. Get the fuck out. It is a tough one though, because I know that expose would have blackened the background for sure. Like, but would it have been enough to black out every star? Like, when you take a photo on Earth, you can still see stars, right? So in the vastness of space, complete blackness, surely you would have been able to see at least one star. Surely. Just one. It is a bit sus, especially when you add that to the lighting discrepancy and the flag waving. I don't know, there's a lot of problems with this, especially when you go down this rabbit hole of conspiracies and you find so many different aspects of this moon landing that stand out, and it's not so black and white, and no pun intended there, but I'll take it anyway. There's so many problems with it. And talking about problems, let's actually move on to one that NASA absolutely wishes they could explain away into the cosmos. So, okay, guys, prepare yourself for this one, because, I mean, there's something so overtly obvious that something's off with this, and I could not believe this is a thing, right? So, you remember all the original footage from the moon landing in 1969, right? Well, NASA kinda lost it. yeah, yeah, no shit, honestly. The original tapes of one of the greatest moments in human history are missing. I'm just gonna let that sink in for you whilst I compose myself. Gone. Erased. Taped over with an episode of Friends or something. I don't know. But how wild is that? How wild is that they're just gone? The tapes are gone. Oh, and to any of my younger listeners who might not know what a tape is, things used to be recorded on tape, not iPhones. Now, I'm not 1969 old, not anywhere near. But my version of tapes, right, back in the 90s were big black boxes with roll of film inside, and you used to be able to tape over the existing tape with another tape, and then it would go into a tape player which would connect to your TV so you could watch films or people's weird wedding reruns, I don't know. And then you would have to take the tape out and rewind it with a pencil to go back to the start. I don't know. I don't know how it worked, but look it up if you're interested. But let's just thank Netflix for the technological advancements there. Appreciate you, Netflix. Yeah, I would have no idea how to explain a tape further than that. Does make you think, actually, if you were transported back to, let's say, the 1800s, and you had to explain something like Wi-Fi or a smartwatch. Like, I would be fucked. Like, Wi-Fi, it's a connection that allows you to access unlimited information in seconds. I don't know. A smartwatch tells you the time, but also your heart rate, and you can touch it to tell it to call your girlfriend. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'd be fine as a time traveler. I would fit right in back then. Like, swap my cow for your goat. Sorted. Sweet. Anyway, I've gone way off track there. Massively digressed. What was I even talking about? Oh yeah, NASA lost the tapes of humanity's greatest achievement. Yeah, that. So, well, in 2006, it came out that hundreds of data tapes from the Apollo missions just disappeared. NASA, of course, claims, and I quote slash paraphrase, it was an innocent mistake and those tapes were accidentally erased or lost because of a shortage of storage space. Right. Sounds suspiciously convenient. Theorists, however, believe those tapes are being hidden, maybe in Area 51 or the Vatican, because they might have contained evidence of something NASA didn't want us to see. Maybe there were glitches in the footage, maybe you could hear cut at the end of the scene, or maybe something even crazier, like alien life forms and UFOs. Oh yeah, we're going there. No episode of Conspirashy would be complete without a twist. What if the moon landing wasn't fake, but the real story is being covered up? Let's talk aliens. Some theorists believe the real reason NASA stopped going to the moon wasn't because of funding cuts, as they told us, but because we were warned off by ET phone home extraterrestrials. Yup. According to this theory, the astronauts discovered alien bases, strange technology, and even living beings on the moon. Just 200 and how many thousand? 270,000 miles from Earth. Just some aliens up there, Netflix and chilling, protecting the moon from us hooligans down here. Don't blame them. But can you imagine little old Neil Armstrong coming down on his ship, knowing he just made one of the most iconic speeches of all time, feeling like an absolute G, first man on the moon, looks over, sees a giant UFO and a mad alien civilization, and he's just like, fuck me. What is that? What are those? You ain't from Kansas, mate. you ain't from the US of A. What the fuck is going on? Buzz, back up slowly. Maybe they haven't seen us. Get back on the ship. Get the fuck out of here. Quick. Supporters of this theory actually do point to strange sightings in the Apollo 11 footage. So it's not just, people saying, oh, maybe there's aliens and we make things up. There are some unexplained lights and strange objects moving around in the background, to be fair. Could it just be debris, cosmic rays, or were we being watched by something otherworldly? I mean, it's not that crazy to think that something could have been floating around up there that we shouldn't have seen, or let alone recorded, right? So, and I think that, I'm completely generalizing here, but we are pretty much all in that stage now where even your average Joe is on board and accepting that aliens exist and we're not alone in the universe. We're getting more information now coming from those declassified files about UFOs or UAPs, as they're now referred to, now that we are all coming to terms with the fact that we've encountered aliens and flying things, and governments have been reverse engineering their technology for years to make things like tactical weapons, mobile phones, drones, weather manipulation devices. I could go on and on. And also the fact that we are all coming around to the idea that aliens exist right now, especially with the state of the world, is also suspiciously convenient timing, but that's many other conspiracies or many other episodes coming soon. Anyway, back to the Apollo 11 mission. If there was something up there, it would explain why we stopped going back to the moon. It is a wild idea, sure, but the fact that NASA stopped after just a handful of missions does make you question, did we actually find something up there that scared us off? It would piece a couple of things together, because why would you go through all that time, effort, and money to get humans on the moon just to give up on space exploration? You just achieved it. You just got there. You just put people on the moon. You put Buzz, you put Neil, they're on the moon. Why then just give up on this whole thing? And yeah, I know they can say it's funding cuts and whatnot, but if you've ever seen For All Mankind on Apple TV, it kind of covers this that we're talking about right now. And it's a fantastic show. It's one of my favorites, actually. And it dives into what would have happened if the funding continued and the space race was still ongoing. And I'm going to completely butcher the synopsis here. So I advise go watch the trailer, because this is going to be awful. But it kind of explores what if more funding went into space exploration, how far we would have advanced each decade, and we would have had a small colony on Mars. we'd already be making so much money off of mining asteroids for trillions, quadrillions of dollars. And also it has amazing storylines intertwined with Russia and North Korea. And yeah, it's a good show. Great show. Go watch it if you haven't. So it does make you question, why would they have stopped the space exploration programs when so much money could have been made from it? So we could have advanced so much more as a civilization at this point. So what it does for me is it raises a few questions. Did we find something up there that scared us off? Or were the tapes genuinely lost by mistake? Are the tapes being hidden on purpose to avoid mass chaos and panic? Or to hide the fact that they were just filmed in Studio 7 in Hollywood? There's actually a film that came out recently, wasn't there? Fly Me to the Moon. It's with Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson, and it's actually set in the 60s. It's all about staging the moon landing and how they managed to pull it off, I think. It's actually funded by NASA, which is interesting. Get ahead of the curve kind of thing. I haven't actually seen it, as you can probably hear, because I don't have much more information to tell you about it, other than it was funded by NASA and it's about the moon landing. But yeah, if you want to go and check that out, then do. Guys, the Moon Landing Hoax is like a black hole. It just keeps pulling in more and more wild ideas. People keep coming up with new theories, new pieces of evidence, in quotation marks, whether it's the supposed cover-up of alien encounters, or the missing data tapes, or the flag-waving, lighting discrepancies. It's a rabbit hole that never seems to end, and it's always such a fun read, and I hope you've enjoyed diving into it today. I know I have, and in my opinion, that's what makes conspiracies so fun, and it's why I chose to do this podcast. I love how they allow us to challenge and question everything. Like, even humanity's greatest achievements are not off the table. So the questions are, could it all be a lie? Or could it just be our imaginations running wild? But I would love to hear your take. Did NASA pull off the greatest hoax of all time? Or did they achieve the monumental task of placing the first man on the moon? I hope you've got from this episode that I'm completely open to all suggestions. So whether you think the aliens are on Netflix and chilling up there watching us, whether you have your own theories about the moon landing, or whether it's complete speculation and you'd like to share any evidence you have to, take off the tinfoil hat once and for all, I'd love to hear from you and grow this conspiracy community. It's a safe space. Let's have fun with it. Let's not take it too seriously, but also let's dive into some crazy conspiracies over the next few episodes. So hit me up on Instagram at Conspirashy. That's just the podcast name, at Conspirashy. Or you can email me, conspirashy@gmail.com, with your theories about this episode or any theories you'd like me to cover. And who knows, maybe I'll feature them in a future episode. Conspiracy. That's it for today's episode of Conspiracy, where weird is the new normal. Join us next week for a brand new conspiracy theory. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And remember, the truth is out there.